I didn't remember the moment he marked me, but my body did. The first thing I noticed when I woke up wasn't the ceiling or the unfamiliar room. It was the cold weight around my wrist. Thin, metallic, not a bracelet I owned, not anything I would ever choose. My breath came out shallow as I pushed myself up on the bed, sheets too smooth, too expensive, sliding against my skin like they didn't belong to me either. The air smelled different here. Cleaner, sharper, like something controlled, like someone controlled it. I blinked hard, trying to gather fragments of memory, but they slipped through my mind like water through my fingers. Rain. I remembered rain. Loud, relentless, and headlights cutting through the dark like eyes that found me before I could run. My heart started to pound, slow at first, then faster, louder, until I could hear it in my ears. I swung my legs over the side of the bed, bare feet touching cool marble floors that sent a chill straight up my spine. This wasn't my apartment. This wasn't anywhere near my life. I stood too quickly and the room tilted, forcing me to grab the edge of a nearby table. My fingers brushed against something, glass, smooth, untouched, and for a second, I saw it again. A reflection, not of the room, of him, tall, still, watching. Now you belong to me. The words echoed in my head like they had been carved there, not spoken. I turned toward the door just as it opened without a sound. And there he was. Exactly like the memory. Exactly like the reflection. Dark suit. No tie. Calm in a way that didn't feel peaceful. It felt dangerous. Like nothing around him moved unless he allowed it. His eyes found mine immediately, not searching, not questioning. Knowing. You're awake, he said, voice low, steady, like he had been waiting for this exact second. I swallowed, forcing my voice to work. Where am I? He didn't answer right away. Instead, his gaze dropped to my wrist, to the metal band. His jaw tightened slightly, just enough for me to notice. Then he stepped closer, each movement deliberate, controlled, like he understood the space between us better than I did. Safe, he said finally. The word didn't comfort me. It settled heavy in my chest, uncertain, incomplete. I took a step back without thinking. I don't know you. A pause. Not long. Just enough to feel intentional. You will. Something about the way he said it made my pulse spike again, sharper this time, like my body recognized a truth my mind refused to accept. I shook my head. No, I need to leave. The corner of his mouth moved, not quite a smile. Not even close. That's not going to happen. The room felt smaller suddenly. The air tighter. I glanced toward the door, calculating distance, timing, anything. But deep down, something told me it wouldn't matter. He saw it. Whatever I was thinking, he saw it before I could act on it. You don't remember, he said quietly, almost to himself. I froze. Remember what? He didn't answer. Not directly. Instead, he reached out, not to grab, not to force, but just enough for his fingers to hover near my wrist. Near the mark. That night, he said, voice softer now, but heavier. You chose this. My breath caught. I didn't choose anything. His eyes lifted back to mine, darker now, something unreadable settling behind them. You did. A beat. Then, quieter. You just don't remember why. And in that moment, standing in a room that wasn't mine, wearing something I didn't understand, staring at a man who looked like he already knew every answer I didn't have, I realized something far worse than being lost. I wasn't here by accident. I was here because something I couldn't remember, had already tied me to him. I should have been afraid of him, but what unsettled me more was the way part of me was not. That realization sat heavier than anything else as I stood there, staring at Alexander Kane like my instincts were betraying me. My fingers curled slightly at my sides as I forced myself to stay grounded, to think clearly, to hold on to whatever version of myself existed before this room, before that mark, before him. You are wrong, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I would remember choosing something like this. He did not argue. He did not raise his voice. He just watched me, and that was worse. Memory is unreliable under pressure, he replied calmly, especially when the mind is trying to protect itself. I shook my head again, taking another step back until I felt the edge of the bed behind me. No, you are lying. Were you? Have the wrong person. His gaze flicked over my face like he was measuring every word, every reaction, every breath. I do not make mistakes like that. There was no arrogance in his tone, just certainty. And that scared me more than if he had sounded cruel. Silence stretched between us, thick and uncomfortable. I could hear the faint hum of something beyond the walls, distant and controlled, like this entire place operated on a rhythm I did not understand. Then tell me. I pressed, forcing the words out before my courage slipped. What exactly did I agree to? Another pause. This one longer. He glanced once more at my wrist, and I followed his eyes, really looking at the metal band for the first time instead of just feeling it. It was not decorative. It was precise, minimal, almost clinical. There was a small engraving on the inside, barely visible unless you turned your wrist just right. 3 letters. M-A-P. My stomach dropped. What does this mean? I whispered. He stepped closer again, stopping just far enough away to respect space, but close enough that I could feel the shift in the air between us. It means you are under my protection, he said. Protection. The word echoed, but it did not match the tension coiling in my chest. That is not what this feels like, I shot back. This feels like I am being kept here. Those two things are not always different, he said quietly. I let out a breath I did not realize I had been holding, frustration starting to break through the fear. I did not ask for this. His jaw tightened again, subtle but there. Yes, he said, his voice dropping just enough to make my pulse react. You did. I turned away from him then, needing distance, needing something solid to hold on to. My eyes scanned the room, searching for anything familiar, anything mine. There was nothing. No phone, no bag, no trace of the life I remembered. My chest tightened. Where are my things? He did not hesitate this time. Secure. I spun back toward him. I want them back. His expression did not change, but something in his eyes sharpened. Not yet. The words hit harder than they should have. Not because of what he said, but because of how final it sounded. Like this was not a negotiation. Like I was already part of something I did not understand. My fingers brushed my wrist again, tracing the edge of the band, and for a split second, something flickered in my mind. Not a full memory, just a sensation. Cold rain against my skin, my hand gripping fabric. His voice, closer this time. Not distant, not echoing. Real. Stay with me. I froze. My breath caught as the fragment slipped away as quickly as it came. I looked back at him slowly, my voice barely above a whisper. What happened that night? This time, he did not answer immediately. And somehow, that silence told me more than any explanation could. Because whatever the truth was, he was deciding how much of it I was allowed to have. The way he stayed silent made me realize something I had not considered before, not that he did not know what happened, but that he was choosing what I deserved to know and what I did not. And that thought sent a sharp edge of anger through the fear tightening in my chest. I straightened slowly, forcing myself to meet his eyes again. You do not get to decide that for me. I said, my voice quieter now, but sharper, more controlled than before. Something shifted in his expression, not surprise, not exactly, but attention, like I had just crossed a line he had been waiting for me to reach. I already did, he replied, and the calm certainty in his tone made my pulse spike again. I took a step forward this time, closing some of the distance between us before I could second-guess myself, then undo it. I said, take this off, let me leave, and whatever you think happened, we can figure it out without this. My fingers lifted slightly again toward the band around my wrist, but I did not touch it this time. I held his gaze instead, waiting for him to react. He did not move immediately, did not reach for me, did not raise his voice. He simply studied me like he was recalculating something in real time. If I remove that, he said slowly, you lose the protection that comes with it. I let out a small breath that almost sounded like a laugh, but there was no humor in it. Protection from what? I asked, and for the first time since I had woken up, he did not answer right away. His eyes shifted just slightly, not away from me, but past me, like he was considering something beyond this room, beyond this moment. And that hesitation made something cold settle deeper in my stomach. From the people who were looking for you that night, he said finally, and the words landed differently than everything else, heavier, more real. My mind tried to latch onto it, to pull meaning from it, but the memory still would not come. Only fragments rain. The sound of tires on wet pavement, my own breath too fast, too uneven, and his voice closer than before. Stay with me. I pressed my lips together, forcing myself to focus. Why were they looking for me? I asked. He shook his head once, not dismissive, just firm. That is not the right question. Frustration flared again. Then what is? This time he stepped closer, closing the remaining distance until I could feel the warmth of his presence. Without him touching me, his voice dropped just enough to make every word land sharper. The question is why you ran toward me instead of away. My breath caught the words, hitting somewhere deeper than logic, somewhere instinctive, something that felt almost like recognition, but still just out of reach. I would not do that, I said quickly, too quickly, and we both knew it. His gaze did not soften, but something in it shifted again, something quieter, more certain. You already did, he repeated, and this time it did not sound like control, it sounded like fact. My chest tightened as another flicker pushed through the fog in my mind, not clear, not complete, but stronger than before. My hand grabbing onto his jacket, the fabric soaked with rain, my voice shaking, but determined. Do not let them take me. I stumbled back slightly as the memory vanished, leaving only the echo behind. I stared at him, my heart racing harder, now not just from fear, but from something else, something that felt dangerously close to truth. You are not telling me everything, I said, and this time my voice was not shaking at all. He held my gaze for a long moment before answering, and when he did, his voice was quieter than before, but somehow even more final. No, he said, I am not. And in that moment, I realized something that changed everything. More than the mark, more than the room, more than him. I was not just trying to remember what happened that night. I was trying to understand why a part of me still believed him, even without the memory, to prove it. Trust is not supposed to feel like this. It is not supposed to feel like standing on the edge of something you cannot see with no proof it will hold. And yet, that was exactly where I was, my heart still racing, my thoughts pulling in two opposite directions, one telling me to run, the other telling me I already had and ended up here for a reason I did not understand. I forced myself to breathe slowly, to ground myself in something real, something I could control. Then start telling me something, I said, my voice steady again, even if everything inside me was not. Because right now all I know is that I woke up in a place that is not mine, wearing something I did not agree to, with a man who keeps saying I chose this, but will not explain why. He did not interrupt, he did not deflect, he just listened, and somehow that made it harder to stay angry. You are not a prisoner here, he said finally, and I let out a quiet breath that almost turned into a bitter smile. That is not convincing, I replied. His eyes held mine unshaken. You can walk out of this room anytime you want. I glanced toward the door instinctively, then back at him. And what happens if I do? Another pause, but this one felt different, less guarded, more deliberate. Then you will find out why I said you needed protection. The answer settled heavy in the air between us, not a threat, not exactly, but not reassurance, either, something in between, something that made the choice feel less like freedom and more like a test. I hesitated, then moved before I could overthink it, my steps slow at first, then more certain. As I crossed the room, the marble floor cool beneath my feet, every movement loud in the silence behind me. I reached the door, my hand hovering just inches from the handle. My pulse loud again, my mind racing through possibilities, none of them clear, none of them safe. I glanced back once. Alexander had not moved. He stood exactly where I left him, watching, not stopping me, not encouraging me, just watching, like he already knew what I would do. I turned back to the door and wrapped my fingers around the handle. It was colder than I expected, solid, real. I pulled it open slowly. The hallway beyond was wide, quiet, lined with soft lighting that made everything feel too calm, too controlled, like the rest of this place. I stepped out, my bare feet meeting the same polished surface, stretching in both directions. No guards, no noise, no visible barriers, just space, open and waiting. I took another step, then another, my breath shallow, my senses sharper, now picking up every small detail, the faint hum of air conditioning, the distant sound of something mechanical somewhere far away. This place was not empty, it was just hidden. I reached the end of the hallway, where large glass panels revealed the outside for the first time since I woke up. The view stole the air from my lungs, not because it was beautiful, although it was, but because it was isolated, rolling land stretching for miles, no neighboring buildings, no streets, no easy exits, just distance, the kind that made you realize how far you were from everything familiar, from everything safe. I pressed my hand lightly against the glass, grounding myself as the weight of it all settled in my chest. This was not just a house, this was a world built to keep people out, or keep someone in. I turned slowly, my thoughts catching up with me, my earlier confidence slipping into something quieter, more uncertain. I was not locked in, but I was not free either, not in any way that mattered. I walked back down the hallway, slower this time, more aware, more careful. When I stepped back into the room, Alexander was still there, exactly where I left him, like he had not doubted for a second that I would return. I closed the door behind me softly and met his eyes again. This is not protection, I said quietly. This is control. His expression did not change, but something in his gaze softened just slightly, something I could not name. Sometimes, he said, they look the same at the beginning. And for the first time since I woke up, I realized something even more unsettling than everything else. I had not walked back into that room because I had no choice. I walked back because part of me already knew he was right. It was the quiet that made everything feel heavier, not the silence itself, but the way nothing in this place happened by accident. Every step, every door, every word felt placed with intention. And now, so did I. I stood there for a moment longer after speaking, watching him, waiting for some kind of reaction, something sharper, something that would make it easier to push back against him. But Alexander Kane did not react the way I expected. He did not argue. He did not deny it. He simply nodded once, like he had been waiting for me to understand that part on my own. Control keeps you alive longer than freedom does in situations like yours, he said, and something about the way he said it made it sound less like a warning and more like experience. I crossed my arms instinctively, trying to create some kind of barrier between us, even if it was only symbolic. You still have not told me what situation that is, I replied. His gaze shifted slightly, not away from me, but inward, like he was deciding how much to reveal this time. You were in the wrong place at the right time, he said. And now the wrong people know your face. My stomach tightened again, that cold sensation returning, sharper, now more defined. What does that mean? I asked. He took a slow breath, like he was choosing his words carefully. It means you saw something you were not supposed to see. The words hit harder than I expected, not because they were dramatic, but because they felt real, grounded in something I could almost reach if my memory would cooperate. I do not remember seeing anything, I said quietly. He nodded once, like that confirmed something for him instead of contradicting it. That is why you are still here, he replied. I frowned slightly, confusion cutting through the fear. That does not make sense. His eyes held mine, steady, unwavering. It does, if forgetting is the only thing keeping you alive right now. The room felt colder after that, like the air had shifted again. I glanced down at my wrist, at the band, at the letters engraved inside M.A.P. My fingers traced over them slowly this time, not pulling away, not rejecting it, just feeling it, like maybe the answer was hidden there somewhere, marked and protected. I murmured under my breath, the words coming out before I could stop them. His head tilted, just slightly, a flicker of recognition passing through his expression. You do remember more than you think, he said, and my breath caught again, not because of what he said, but because of how certain he sounded. I looked back up at him, sharper, now more focused. Then stop speaking in pieces and tell me everything, I demanded. He stepped closer again, not invading, not forcing, just closing the distance enough to make his presence impossible to ignore. If I tell you everything too soon, he said quietly, you might remember everything all at once. I swallowed the implication, settling in slowly. And that is bad, I asked. His gaze softened just enough to feel different, not weaker, just more careful. It could be, he replied. I let out a slow breath, my mind racing, trying to piece together something, anything that would make this clearer. But every path led back to the same place, uncertainty. In him, I studied his face for a long moment, searching for something I could trust, something that felt real and not controlled. And then I saw it, not in his words, not in his posture, but in the way he watched me, like he was waiting for me to decide something important, something that would change everything again. Why me? I asked quietly this time, the question slipping out before I could filter it. His expression did not change immediately, but something in his eyes did, something deeper, something almost personal. Because you chose me first, he said, and this time there was no hesitation, no pause, just truth delivered without explanation. And for the first time since I woke up, the fear inside me shifted, not disappearing, not even lessening, just changing shape. Because somewhere beneath all the confusion, all the missing pieces, all the things he was not telling me, one thought settled in clearly and refused to leave. If I chose him once, then there was a reason, and whatever that reason was, it had not disappeared just because I could not remember it. Yet the way he said it did not sound like persuasion. It sounded like something already decided, and that was what unsettled me the most. Not the missing memories, not the isolation, not even the mark around my wrist, but the quiet certainty in his voice, like whatever connection existed between us had been sealed long before I woke up in this room. I held his gaze for a second longer, then looked away, needing space from that feeling from him, from the way my thoughts kept circling back to something I could not fully grasp. If I chose you, I said slowly, then I need to know why. He did not answer right away, and I was starting to understand that his silence was never empty. It always meant something, it always carried weight. You will, he said eventually, just not all at once. Frustration flared again, but it was weaker, now edged with something else, something that felt dangerously close to curiosity. I turned and moved toward the window again, needing something solid, something real beyond him, beyond this conversation. The glass was cool. Under my fingertips, the land stretching out endlessly beyond it, still unfamiliar, still distant, still unreachable. I studied it for a moment, then spoke again, without turning around. How long have I been here? Less than 24 hours. He replied. The answer came quickly this time, like that detail was safe to give. I nodded slightly, doing the math in my head, trying to anchor myself to time, to something linear, something that made sense. And before that, I asked, I was running. He said simply. I closed my eyes briefly, letting the words settle. Running. The same fragment flickered again. Rain breath, footsteps, too fast, a hand reaching not away, but toward him. From who? I pressed. He exhaled slowly behind me, not impatient, just measured. People who do not need a reason, he said. Only an opportunity. That did not help. It only made everything feel larger, more complicated, more dangerous than I could define. I turned back to him, my arms dropping to my sides, the tension in my shoulders easing just slightly, not because I trusted him, but because I was starting to understand the shape of this situation, even if I could not see all of it yet. So what now? I asked. I stay here until I remember something that might make this make sense. His gaze softened just enough again, something careful, something controlled, but not cold. You stay here until you are safe, he corrected. I shook my head, once a small movement, but firm. That is your definition, not mine. For a moment neither of us spoke, and in that silence something shifted again, not in the room, not in him, but in me, something subtle, but real. The fear that had been driving every reaction, every word, every step since I woke up began to change, not disappearing, but settling, becoming quieter. More focused, less panic, more awareness. I straightened slightly, my voice steadier, now more deliberate. If I am staying here, then I need more than pieces, I said. I need rules. I need to understand what I can and cannot do. This time he nodded without hesitation. Fair. He said the word simple, but significant, like we had just crossed into something new, not control, not resistance, something in between. You can move freely inside the house. He continued. You will not be stopped. I listened carefully, storing every word, every detail. Outside, he added, you do not leave without me. I met his eyes again immediately. That is not freedom. I said. He did not argue. No, he replied. It is not. The honesty caught me off guard more than anything else had so far, and for a second neither of us looked away. And the mark? I asked quietly, my fingers brushing it again without thinking. Does it come off? He watched that small movement, his expression unreadable. Not yet, he said, and something in his tone told me that answer was not about control. It was about timing, about something I still did not understand. I let out a slow breath, then nodded once, not in agreement, not in acceptance, but in acknowledgement, because whether I liked it or not, I was already part of this, already inside it, already marked by something bigger than my missing memory. I stepped back slightly, creating just enough distance to think clearly again, to feel like myself even. If I did not fully know who that was in this moment, then I guess I start remembering, I said quietly, and for the first time since I woke up, something in his expression shifted in a way I could not ignore, not control, not calculation, something closer to anticipation. You already have, he said, and this time when I looked at him, I did not just see the man holding the answers. I saw the one waiting for me to find them myself. The strange part was not that I was starting to accept the situation, it was that I was starting to understand it in a way that made it harder to walk away. I stayed where I was for a moment longer, watching him, feeling that quiet shift inside me settle into something more controlled, less reactive, more aware. Then show me where I am allowed to go, I said. Finally, my voice steady, my posture straight, like I had decided something, even if I could not fully explain it. Yet his eyes held mine for a second longer before he gave a small nod, not approval, not permission, something closer to acknowledgement. Come on, he said simply, and turned without waiting to see if I would follow. I hesitated only for a second before stepping after him, my bare feet silent against the marble floor, the door opening easily. As I moved into the hallway again, this time it felt different, not unfamiliar, but not entirely foreign either, like I was seeing it with clearer eyes. We walked side by side, not touching, not speaking, but the space between us felt intentional, not distant, just measured, like he understood exactly how close to stand without making it feel like control. The hallway opened into a larger space, a living area, expansive, and minimal, everything placed with precision, soft neutral tones, large windows, letting in natural light that softened the sharp edges of the architecture. It was beautiful in a way that did not try too hard, in a way that felt permanent. I slowed slightly, taking it in, my gaze moving over details without fully focusing on any of them, until something caught my attention. A table near the far wall, a single object resting on it out of place in its simplicity, a small leather notebook worn at the edges like it had been handled often. My steps shifted toward it before I realized what I was doing, drawn by something I could not explain behind me. I felt his attention sharpen, but he did not stop me. I reached the table, my fingers hovering over the notebook for a second before I picked it up. The leather was soft, warm, like it had been touched recently, like it mattered. I opened it slowly, not expecting anything. But the moment my eyes fell on the first page, my breath caught. Handwriting familiar, not just recognizable, but mine. My fingers tightened slightly around the edges as I read the first line. I had written in careful, steady script, "If anything happens, find him." The words hit harder than anything else had so far, not because they were dramatic, but because they were undeniable. This was not something he told me. This was something I told myself. My pulse picked up again, faster, sharper, as more fragments pushed forward, not clear, not complete, but stronger now. A streetlight flickering overhead, the sound of rain hitting pavement, my own voice urgent, quieter, but firm. "If I cannot get out of this, I need someone who can keep me alive." I closed the notebook slowly, my hands no longer steady. When I turned back to him, Alexander had not moved. He stood a few feet away, watching me, not surprised, not confused, just waiting, like he had known this moment would come. "You wrote that," he said quietly. I nodded, once my throat tight, the truth settling in deeper, now heavier, more real. "I was not forced," I said, more to myself than to him. "I chose this." He did not respond immediately, but something in his expression shifted again, not control, not calculation, something almost like restraint, like he was holding back more than he was showing. "Yes," he said finally, and this time there was no distance in the word, no ambiguity, just confirmation. I looked down at the notebook again, then back at him, my thoughts moving faster now, connecting pieces that had not made sense before. "Then why do I feel like I do not trust you?" I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop it. He held my gaze steady, his answer immediate this time. "Because you did not choose me for trust," he said. "You chose me because I was the only one they were afraid of." And something in the way he said it made the room feel quieter, heavier, like I had just stepped into a truth that would change everything, whether I was ready for it or not. The truth settled in slower than everything else, but it stayed longer, heavier, deeper, like it had been waiting for me to reach it on my own. I looked down at the notebook again, my handwriting staring back at me like proof I could not argue with. I had chosen this, not blindly, not accidentally, but intentionally. And that changed everything, even if I did not remember why. I closed the notebook more carefully this time, like it mattered, like it was a part of me I had lost and was only just beginning to find again. "If they are afraid of you," I said quietly, lifting my eyes back to him, "then that means you are not the safer option. You are just the stronger one." He did not deny it. He did not soften it. He simply held my gaze and nodded once. Correct. The honesty should have made it easier to push back against him, but it did not. It made it harder, because there was no manipulation to fight against, no false reassurance to reject, just truth presented exactly as it was. I took a slow breath, trying to steady my thoughts, trying to stay grounded in something that made sense. "Then why would I trust strength over safety?" I asked. His expression shifted slightly, not softer, not weaker, just more focused, like this question mattered more than the others had, "Because safety was already gone," he said, and the words landed in a place that felt uncomfortably familiar, like something I had already known before I lost the memory of it. My fingers tightened slightly around the notebook as another fragment pushed forward, sharper than before, not just sensation, not just sound, but meaning. A voice, not mine, urgent, close. "They are not going to stop looking for you." My own voice answering, steady despite the fear. "Then I need someone they will not touch." I inhaled sharply as the memory slipped away again, leaving behind a stronger certainty than before. I looked at him differently, now not just as the man controlling this space, not just as the one holding answers, but as the choice I had made, under pressure, under fear, under something real. "You were not the safest option," I said slowly, piecing it together out loud. "You were the only one who made the other options disappear." Something in his gaze shifted again, at that, not pride, not approval, something quieter, something that felt almost like recognition. "Yes," he said simply. I let the words settle, then nodded once more to myself more than to him, because it made sense now, not fully, not completely, but enough. The logic was there even if the emotion had not caught up yet. So what happens if I remember everything? I asked the question, quieter this time, less confrontational, more careful. He did not answer immediately, and I was starting to recognize that pattern, not hesitation, not avoidance, but selection. Like every answer he gave was intentional, measured. Then you will understand why you asked me not to let you go, he said, and something in his tone made my chest tighten again, not from fear this time, but from the weight of what that meant. I glanced down at my wrist again, at the mark, at the letters that no longer felt entirely foreign. My fingers traced them slowly this time, not rejecting, not questioning, just acknowledging. And if I change my mind? I asked softly. He stepped closer, not enough to crowd me, but enough to shift the air between us again, enough to make his presence impossible to ignore. You will not, he said, and this time there was something different in his voice. Not control, not dominance, something deeper, something steadier, something that felt like certainty built on knowledge I had not reached. Yet I met his eyes again, searching for doubt, for hesitation, for anything that would give me a reason to challenge that statement. But there was nothing, just that same quiet, unwavering confidence. And for the first time, I did not immediately push against it. I just stood there, letting the silence stretch between us, feeling the weight of everything I had learned, everything I had not remembered yet, and everything I had already chosen without knowing I had done it. My grip on the notebook loosened slightly as a final thought settled in, clear and undeniable. I did not choose him because I trusted him. I chose him because I believed he would not let anything take me away again. And the most unsettling part was not that he might be dangerous, it was that I had decided he was exactly the kind of dangerous I needed. It was a strange thing to realize that the most dangerous part of this situation was not him, it was the version of me who had already made this decision. Without hesitation, I stood there holding the notebook, feeling the weight of my own handwriting, like it carried more authority than anything he could say, because it came from a version of me that understood the full picture, a version that had seen everything and still chose him. I exhaled slowly, my fingers relaxing as I placed the notebook back on the table with more care than I expected, like I was returning something important, not just setting it down. Then I need to catch up to her, I said quietly, not looking at him at first, but at the place where the notebook had been, like it still held something I had not fully absorbed yet, the version of me who made that choice. I lifted my eyes to his again, this time, not searching, not challenging, just steady. Because right now I am behind. He watched me closely, something in his expression shifting again, not surprise, not calculation, something closer to approval, but quieter than that, more restrained. You are not as far behind as you think, he said. I shook my head slightly, a faint, almost humorless breath escaping me. I woke up not remembering why I ran, or why I trusted you, or what I was trying to escape. That feels pretty far behind. His gaze did not waver. You remembered enough to come back into the room, he said simply. That was not instinct, that was decision. I paused at that, letting the words settle, because he was right. I had walked away. I had seen the distance, the isolation, the truth of where I was, and I had still come back, not because I had to, but because something inside me told me it was the right move. Even without understanding it fully, I crossed my arms again, but this time it felt different, less defensive, more grounding. So what now? I asked. I stay here, I remember pieces, and eventually everything makes sense. He stepped slightly to the side, not away from me, but giving the space a different shape, like he was shifting from control into something more balanced. Now, he said, you learn the difference between being protected and being prepared. I frowned slightly, the words unfamiliar, but important. Prepared for what? His answer came without hesitation this time. For the moment they realize you are still alive. The sentence landed quiet, but heavy, not dramatic, not exaggerated, just real. My chest tightened again. But it was not fear this time, not exactly. It was awareness, sharper, clearer, more defined than before. I nodded slowly, accepting that piece without arguing it, because somewhere deep down it already felt true. And you think I can handle that? I asked. He held my gaze steady, his voice lower, now more certain than before. You already did once. Another fragment flickered at the edge of my mind, stronger than before, not just rain, not just fear, but resolve. My own voice steady despite everything. I am not going to hide, I just need time. I blinked as the memory slipped again, but it left something behind, not confusion, not panic, but direction. I straightened slightly, my shoulders settling into something more grounded, more certain than before. Then I guess I start preparing, I said quietly, And for the first time since I woke up, the words did not feel forced, they felt earned. He studied me for a moment longer, then gave a small nod like something had just aligned exactly the way he expected it to. You already started, he replied, and this time when I looked at him, I did not just see the man I had chosen, I saw the reason I had chosen him, not because he was safe, not because he was kind, but because when everything else collapsed, he was the only thing that did not move. And as that realization settled fully into place, one final thought followed, clear and steady. I did not need him to become someone easier to trust. One needed to become someone strong enough to understand why I trusted him in the first place.